The hangar was silent, except for the low hum of alien machines. The human engineer stood there, small among giants. He was the only human allowed inside this alien warship, and even then, he was watched carefully. Every movement of his hands, every sound of his tools, was followed by suspicious alien eyes. The aliens were tall, armored, and proud. Their armor was not just metal. It was alive, a mix of technology and biology, something no human could understand. To touch it without permission was a crime, but he had been given a task. He was ordered to fix a warrior's damaged chest plate, and refusing the order was not an option. The warrior stood still in front of him, towering over him like a statue of steel. Her armor was scratched from battle, cracked near the shoulder, and loose at the straps. The human engineer raised his hands carefully, showing he carried no weapon, only tools. He started working, adjusting the fasteners, repairing the torn connections. His hands trembled slightly, not from the work, but from the way the alien guards stared at him with cold, sharp eyes. As he worked, he noticed something strange. The warrior's breathing changed. It slowed, then deepened, almost like she felt something from his touch. At first, he ignored it, thinking maybe she was simply tired from battle. But when his fingers pressed against a certain spot on the armor, the warrior shivered, as if the armor itself reacted. The human froze. His tools hovered in the air, his heart beating fast. This was not normal, and he knew it. Armor should not move, it should not breathe, and it should not respond to him. And yet it did. Then, the chamber filled with a voice. It was deep, commanding, and powerful. Every alien warrior froze, lowering their heads in respect. It was the voice of the alien queen, echoing from the walls like thunder. Her words struck like lightning. "Human," she said, "I see what you do." The hangar fell into silence. Dozens of alien eyes turned toward him. The human engineer felt his legs weaken. His tools slipped slightly from his hand. Why would the queen speak to him? He was just fixing armor, nothing more. But her words carried weight, and everyone knew the queen never wasted her voice. The warrior in front of him stepped back, her eyes wide inside the glowing helmet. The guards gripped their weapons tighter, their sharp teeth showing as they hissed in low whispers. They believed the queen could see everything, and if she called out the human's touch, it meant something powerful had been revealed. The human tried to speak, but his voice was dry. "I was only fixing the armor," he whispered, but nobody moved, nobody answered. It felt as if the whole warship had turned its attention to him. The silence was heavy, pressing against his chest. One guard finally spoke, his tone sharp. "What did you do, human?" The words carried anger, but also fear. The engineer shook his head quickly. "Nothing, I swear, I only fixed a loose strap." But even as he said it, he knew it was a lie. He had felt the strange pulse under his hands, the living warmth of the armor that was not supposed to exist. And the queen had noticed. She had noticed everything. The alien guards stepped closer, surrounding him in a half circle. Their weapons hummed with energy, glowing faintly as they prepared for the queen's next command. The human's heart raced. His mind screamed for an explanation, but he had none. He was only an engineer, a simple man with tools and knowledge of machines. He was not a warrior, not a leader, not someone important. So why did the alien queen single him out? The silence broke again with her voice. Her tone was calm, but heavy with meaning. "You touched more than armor, human," she said. Her words sent a wave of shock through the chamber. The aliens exchanged quick, nervous glances, whispers spreading like fire among them. The human lowered his head, not daring to look up. He felt sweat on his forehead, his throat dry, his hands shaking. This was not supposed to happen, he told himself. He only followed orders. He only fixed what they asked him to fix. So why did the queen speak of him as if he had broken some ancient law? The warrior in front of him placed her hand on her chest. She looked shaken, as if she too had felt something awaken inside the armor. But she said nothing, only stared at the human with unreadable eyes. The tension in the chamber grew thicker. Every second stretched longer. Finally, the queen's voice returned, softer but sharper. "Step forward, human," she commanded. The guards immediately moved, pushing him toward the center of the hangar. The human stumbled, his tools clattering against the floor. He raised his eyes slowly, and though the queen was not physically present, her voice felt close, like she stood right behind him. He realized then that this was only the beginning. The armor, the reaction, the queen's words, it all meant something he could not yet understand. And in that moment, the human engineer felt a truth rising inside him. His life would never be the same again. The hangar stayed quiet long after the queen's voice faded. But the silence was not peace. It was heavy, sharp, and filled with whispers. The alien warriors shifted in their armor, their glowing eyes locked on the human who stood frozen in the middle of the chamber. He could feel their suspicion like knives pressing against his skin. The warrior whose armor he had touched stepped back slowly. Her hand brushed over the chest plate where his fingers had been. She looked unsettled, her breathing uneven. Her armor pulsed faintly, as if alive, as if remembering the human's touch. The other warriors noticed too, and that only made their whispers louder. The human wanted to speak, to explain, but his throat refused. He was trapped between giants, and no matter what he said, they would twist it against him. His hands clenched into fists, not in defiance, but to hide the trembling. The only sound he could hear was the low hiss of alien voices speaking in their strange tongue. It was not anger yet, but something worse, fear. One guard stepped closer, his armor plates shifting with a hiss. "You are dangerous," the guard said in a cold voice. The human shook his head quickly. "No, I only did what I was told. I fixed the armor, nothing more." But the guard's glowing eyes narrowed. "Lies. Humans cannot do this." The queen would not speak if it was nothing. The other warriors nodded, their voices rising into an angry buzz. Some spoke of curses, others of forbidden power. The human could not understand all their words, but the tone was clear. They did not see him as a worker anymore. They saw him as a threat. The warrior whose armor he had fixed suddenly raised her hand. Her voice cut through the whispers. He touched it, and it woke. She said slowly, her tone uncertain. Her words spread through the hangar like fire. The whispers turned sharper, more fearful, more hostile. The human's chest tightened. He wanted to shout, to tell them they were wrong, but the truth was worse. He had felt something strange when his hand brushed the armor. Something alive, something powerful, and now they all knew it. The guards closed in tighter, forming a ring around him. He could feel the heat of their weapons, humming faintly with energy. One wrong move, one wrong word, and they would cut him down without hesitation. But then the queen's voice returned, echoing through the walls again. "Do not harm him," she commanded. The guards froze, their weapons lowering. The human felt a rush of air leave his lungs, relief for only a heartbeat. But the queen's next words carried even more weight. "Bring him to me," she said. The hangar filled with tension, the warriors exchanging uneasy glances. Nobody dared to question the queen, but their distrust only grew stronger. One whispered, "Why protect him?" Another hissed, "The queen sees something in him." The human heard their whispers and felt smaller than ever. He was not safe, he was not trusted, and now he was being taken somewhere he did not want to go. The guards seized him by the arms, their grip like iron. His tools fell to the floor with a metallic echo that bounced through the hangar. He was dragged forward, his boots scraping against the ground. The alien warrior he had touched stepped aside, her eyes never leaving him. There was something in her gaze, not hatred but confusion, maybe even fear. As they pulled him through the wide corridors of the alien ship, the whispers followed him. Every alien they passed stopped to stare, their glowing eyes narrowing. The whispers grew like a storm behind him, words he could not understand, but tones he could not mistake. Suspicion, fear, and anger spread like shadows across the ship. The human's mind raced. Why did the queen call him out? What did she mean by saying he touched more than armor? He was no warrior, No sorcerer, just an engineer. Yet his touch had done something even these powerful aliens could not explain. The guards pushed him into a lift, its walls glowing with strange alien light. The hum of energy surrounded him as the lift moved, taking him higher, deeper, closer to the Queen. His stomach knotted with dread, his heart pounding with every passing second. He knew he was walking into something far greater than himself. And he also knew there was no turning back. When the lift opened, he saw a long hallway guarded by towering figures. Their armor was different, heavier, marked with symbols of rank. They looked at him with disgust, as if a human had no right to walk these halls. But none of them dared to stop him, for the Queen had spoken. The guards dragged him forward, their footsteps echoing loudly in the silence. The whispers had faded now, replaced by the cold emptiness of this sacred place. Every step felt heavier, every breath harder. He was being taken to the heart of alien power, to the throne of the Queen herself. The human swallowed hard, his mouth dry. He had no idea what waited for him at the end of this hallway. But one thing was certain. His life was no longer his own. The doors to the Queen's chamber opened with a slow hiss. The human was pushed inside, his arms still gripped tightly by the guards. The air in the room felt heavy, almost alive, like every breath carried weight. The light was dim, glowing softly from the walls that seemed to pulse like veins of a living creature. At the far end of the chamber stood the Queen. She was tall, taller than any warrior he had seen. Her armor fused with her body in ways that blurred the line between flesh and metal. Her presence filled the room before she even spoke. Every guard around him lowered their heads, bowing deeply, but the human could only stare, frozen. Her eyes glowed like twin flames, locking onto him the moment he entered. He wanted to look away, but something in those eyes held him, pulled him. The Queen raised a single hand, and the guards released him, stepping back without a word. He stood there, free but not free, caught in her gaze like a prisoner in invisible chains. "Human," she said, her voice calm yet sharp, echoing through the chamber. "You touched what you should not." Her words cut through him, cold and heavy. He opened his mouth to answer, but the words stuck in his throat. She waited, her silence louder than any shout. Finally, he forced himself to speak. "I'll only fix the armor," he said softly, his voice trembling. But the Queen tilted her head, as if studying him like a strange object. "Only fixed," she repeated, her tone questioning. She stepped closer, her movements smooth, her presence overwhelming. The floor vibrated lightly under her steps, and the human felt smaller with every second. She stopped only a few steps away, her shadow falling over him. "Do you always touch armor this way?" she asked. The question confused him, his brows furrowed. "I don't understand," he said. "I was only doing my job." Her eyes narrowed, glowing brighter. "Then do it again," she commanded. The human blinked in shock. "Again," he whispered. The Queen's voice sharpened. "Yes, show me. Touch the armor once more." The guards moved instantly, pulling another warrior forward. This one stepped into the chamber reluctantly, his armor shining, unbroken, untouched by battle. The warrior glared at the human with hatred, as if daring him to try. But the Queen raised her hand, and silence filled the room once again. The human's hands shook as the guards shoved him closer to the armored figure. He didn't want to do this, but refusing the Queen's command was unthinkable. His fingers hovered over the armor plate, his breath unsteady. He told himself it was nothing, that the first time had been a mistake, a trick of nerves. But when his skin brushed against the alien metal, everything changed. The armor stirred. It shifted under his touch, plates moving smoothly as if alive. The alien warrior stiffened, his breath catching sharply. The glow of the armor pulsed brighter, as though it recognized something in the human's touch. The chamber gasped in unison. Even the guards stepped back, their eyes wide. The human snatched his hand away in fear, but the armor did not return to stillness. It remained awake, glowing faintly, pulsing with a rhythm like a heartbeat. The warrior inside shivered, whispering something in their alien tongue. The queen's lips curved into the faintest hint of a smile. Her eyes glowed with triumph, not anger. "You see," she said softly, her voice filling the chamber. "You are not ordinary, human." The human shook his head quickly, his heart racing. No, I didn't mean to. I don't even know what I did." But the queen stepped closer, her presence pressing down on him like a weight. "It does not matter if you meant it," she said. "It happened." Her words echoed deep into him, and he realized nothing he said would change what she believed. The guards whispered to each other, fear clear in their voices. One of them hissed, "He awakens it. He should not be here." Another growled, "This is forbidden." But the queen raised her hand again, silencing them all. Her gaze never left the human. "You touched more than metal," she said. "You reached into its living core." The human's blood ran cold. He remembered the strange warmth under his hand, the faint pulse he had felt. Now he knew it was not his imagination. The queen turned away, walking back to her throne, her voice calm yet final. "He belongs to me now," she declared. The chamber erupted in shock, the guards growling, the warriors muttering in anger. But none of them dared to speak against her. The human stood frozen, his heart pounding. He had not asked for this, he had not wanted this. Yet the queen had marked him, chosen him, claimed him as hers. As he stood in the center of the chamber, surrounded by alien eyes burning with fear and hatred, he realized something terrifying. His life was no longer in his hands. It belonged to the queen. The chamber stayed heavy with silence after the queen's words. The guards stared at the human with open hatred, but none dared to move. The warrior whose armor had awakened stood frozen, his chest plate still glowing faintly under the human's touch. The human backed away, his breath sharp, his eyes darting around for some escape, but there was none. The queen rose from her throne, her towering form moving with slow power. Her steps echoed across the chamber, each one like the beat of a drum. She stopped in front of him, looking down with those burning eyes. "You feel it, don't you?" she asked, her voice low but cutting. The human swallowed hard, shaking his head. "I don't know what I felt," he whispered, his voice weak. But the queen tilted her head, almost amused. "You lie to yourself," she said. She raised her hand and touched the armor of the warrior standing beside them. Nothing happened. The metal remained cold and still. She looked back at the human, her eyes narrowing. Again, she commanded. The guards shoved him closer, his trembling fingers hovering over the glowing plate. He hesitated, but the queen's gaze left no choice. His hand touched the armor once more, and instantly the glow spread stronger. The warrior gasped, his entire body stiffening. The armor shifted and sealed tightly, like it was alive and responding to the human's presence. The queen's lips curved into the faintest smile. "There it is," she said softly, "the unseen connection." The human pulled his hand back quickly, stumbling away. "I don't understand. Why is this happening?" he cried. But the queen's expression did not soften. "Because you are not like the others of your kind," she said. "You reach where even my warriors cannot." The whispers among the guards grew louder, their fear leaking into their voices. One of them hissed, "It is cursed, it is dangerous." Another growled, "He should be destroyed before it spreads." The human's chest tightened, panic rising inside him. Spread? What do they mean by spread? The queen ignored their protests and stepped even closer to the human. Her voice dropped lower, but her words carried like thunder. "This armor is not only metal," she said. "It breathes, it remembers, it chooses." The human froze, his eyes widening. He remembered the strange warmth, the pulse he felt, the way the armor reacted like it had a heartbeat. Living, she was telling him it was living. He shook his head quickly, desperate. "No, I'm just a man. I only fix things, I don't make them alive." But the queen's voice sharpened. "You did not make it alive, human. You touched what was already living, and it answered you." The words cut through him like a blade. The guards muttered darkly, The warrior shifted uneasily inside his glowing armor, and the human felt the truth clawing at the edge of his mind. Maybe he had felt something inside it, something alive and waiting, something that should not have answered him, yet it did. The queen turned slowly, addressing her warriors. "You fear what you do not understand," she said, her voice steady. "But fear does not change truth." She raised her hand and pointed at the human. "He has awakened the bond," she declared. "He touches the unseen." The chamber erupted with protest, warriors shouting in their harsh language, guards slamming their weapons on the floor. The sound shook the air, but the queen raised her arm, and silence fell instantly. Her power was absolute, her words final. The human stood trembling in the middle, caught in their hatred, but shielded by her command. His heart pounded, his mind spinning. Why him? Why did his touch do this? He had never been special, never been powerful, just an ordinary man with tools and skill. And now he was standing in the center of an empire's secret, chosen or cursed by armor that should not even answer to him. The queen lowered her voice, speaking only to him now. "Do not fear it, human," she said. "It is not a curse. It is a calling." Her words sent a chill down his spine. A calling? She made it sound like destiny, but he wanted no part of it. He just wanted to survive. But survival was no longer his choice. The queen stepped back, her gaze sweeping across the chamber. "He belongs to me," she repeated, her voice unshakable. "No hand will harm him." The guards obeyed, but their hatred only grew deeper. The human could feel it in their stares, sharp and unforgiving. He was alive only because of the queen's will, and that meant he was not free. He was a prisoner of power he did not understand. As the guards closed in around him again, guiding him away from the throne, the human's thoughts spiraled. He could still feel the faint warmth of the armor on his fingertips. He could still hear the queen's words echoing inside his skull. The unseen connection. It was not just a mistake, it was something greater, and he feared what it would cost him. And deep in his heart, one truth became clear. The queen had not saved him. She had claimed him, and she would never let him go. The guards dragged the human through winding corridors, their grip hard on his arms. He did not struggle. He knew it was useless. His mind was heavy with the queen's words, her claims still ringing inside him. But the whispers of the warriors were worse. They did not see him as chosen. They saw him as a curse. The corridors ended at a wide gate, carved with strange alien symbols glowing faint blue. Beyond it, the sound of many voices filled the air. The gate opened, and the human was shoved into a vast chamber filled with towering figures. This was no ordinary hall. It was the council. Rows of alien leaders stood in a circle, their armor heavier, their markings brighter, their presence heavier than soldiers or guards. Their glowing eyes all turned toward him at once, and the weight of their stares nearly crushed him. The guards forced him into the center, leaving him under the gaze of the entire council. The chamber was alive with whispers, sharp, suspicious, and filled with fear. The queen sat above them all on her high seat, calm, unmoving. She raised her hand, and silence fell like a blade cutting through the noise. Her voice was steady. "This human awakened the armor," she said, "before my eyes, before your warriors." Gasps echoed, and the chamber stirred with unrest. One counselor stepped forward, his voice loud and angry. "No human has the right to touch the sacred plates," he growled. Another hissed. "This is a trick, queen. They're deceivers, always deceivers." The words stung the human, but he dared not answer. He kept his head low, his fists clenched, his chest tight with fear. The queen raised her hand again, silencing them. "He did not deceive," she said. "The armor answered him, and you all will see it for yourselves." Her words dropped like stone into water, sending ripples through the council. The alien leaders murmured nervously, some in disbelief, others in anger. The queen gestured, and two guards stepped forward carrying a sealed chest. They placed it in the center, opening it to reveal a fresh set of armor, untouched, unworn. The pieces shimmered faintly, breathing with a life of their own. The council leaned forward, their glowing eyes fixed on the human. "Prove it," one counselor said coldly. "Let him touch it here, in front of all." The human's heart pounded. He wanted to refuse, he wanted to run, but he knew there was no escape. The guards shoved him toward the chest, his trembling hands hovering over the armor. He whispered, "I don't want this." But the queen's voice cut him sharp. "Do it," she commanded. His fingers brushed the armor. Instantly the pieces stirred, sliding into place, shifting as though breathing. The glow spread across the plates like veins of light. The chamber erupted with gasps and shouts. The human snatched his hand away, but the armor continued to pulse faintly, alive in a way none could deny. The counselors stepped back, their disbelief clear. One shouted, "Impossible." Another roared, "This breaks the order. This cannot be allowed." The queen stood slowly, her voice ringing across the chamber. "You see now, he is no trick, he is no lie," she declared. But the council was not convinced. Suspicion burned brighter, louder, fiercer. One counselor pointed at the human, his voice filled with rage. "Then test him. Let us see if he truly controls it or if the armor will turn against him." The chamber agreed, with heavy voices, their whispers becoming demands. They wanted proof, not just once, but many times, until they were satisfied or until he failed. The queen's eyes narrowed, but she did not refuse. She looked at the human, her gaze sharp. "You will face their trial," she said, "and you will survive it." Her words struck him like chains around his throat. Survive? What did she mean by that? The guards dragged the armor from the chest and placed it before him. The counselors circled closer, their glowing eyes locked on him. The air was thick with suspicion, hatred, and curiosity. The human's chest tightened as he realized this was no simple test. This was judgment. "Put it on him," one counselor commanded. The human froze, his blood cold. "Put it on him? The living armor?" He shook his head, whispering, "No, I can't." But the guards seized him, forcing the plates onto his body. The armor clamped down, wrapping around his chest, his shoulders, his arms. It felt warm, too warm, like skin against skin. It pulsed, breathing, pressing alive. The human gasped, choking on the weight, his heart racing. The armor was not just on him. It was in him. The counselors leaned closer, their whispers sharp and eager. "Will it consume him?" one asked. "Will it consume him?" one asked. "Or will it obey?" another hissed. The queen watched silently, her eyes fixed on the human. He staggered under the weight, his breath uneven. The armor pulsed brighter, almost matching the rhythm of his heartbeat. The chamber grew tense, every warrior waiting for the outcome. The human's vision blurred, heat spreading through his veins. He felt something inside the armor, something vast, watching him. Not machine, not alien, it was alive. And it knew him. He gasped, falling to his knees as the armor sealed tight. The chamber roared in shock, voices shouting, some in fear, some in awe. The queen's eyes glowed brighter, her voice cutting through the chaos. "He is bound now," she said. "He cannot be undone." The chamber shook with noise, voices rising like a storm. Some counselors shouted in rage, others stepped back in fear. The human remained on his knees, his breath sharp, his body heavy under the alien armor that now clung to him like a second skin. He could feel it pressing into him, not just on the outside, but deeper, crawling against his heartbeat. The armor pulsed with light, glowing veins racing across his chest and arms. Every throb matched the rhythm of his heart, but stronger, faster. It felt like two heartbeats fighting for control inside his body. He gasped, gripping at the chest plate, but the armor did not move. It was alive, and it did not want to let go. The counselors leaned forward, their glowing eyes wide. One hissed, "It consumes him." Another whispered, "No, it listens." Confusion spread through them, but suspicion burned stronger than wonder. The human staggered to his feet, his legs trembling. He tried to tear the armor off, pulling at the plates, but they sealed tighter. His voice cracked as he shouted, Get it off, I can't. But before he finished, the armor answered. The plates shifted on their own, sliding smoothly across his body. His arms locked as glowing lines spread down to his hands. The air hummed with energy, crackling faintly around him. The guards raised their weapons, fear in their eyes. Then came a sound low, deep like a distant growl. It did not come from the human, but from the armor itself. The chamber froze, silence crashing down. The armor was speaking, not in words, but in sound, in presence, in life. The human's eyes widened in terror. He could feel its thoughts pressing against his own. It was not machine, it was not dead. It was awake. He stumbled backward, clutching his head. Visions flashed across his mind. Alien battlefields, warriors covered in the same glowing plates, their screams echoing, their blood feeding the armor. He saw the rise of warriors who wore it, and the fall of those who failed to control it. He gasped for air, his chest burning. The queen rose from her throne, her gaze sharp but calm. "This is what I saw," she said, her voice firm. "The armor remembers him." Her words stunned the chamber, but she spoke with certainty. "He does not wear it. It wears him." The human shook his head violently. No, I don't want this. I don't belong to it." But the armor pulsed in response, almost as if rejecting his words. The light spread brighter, racing across his body like fire under his skin. A guard shouted, "Kill him before it grows stronger." Another raised his weapon, but the queen's hand snapped up. "Stand down," she commanded, her voice shaking the chamber. Her eyes glowed fiercely. "You would destroy what we have sought for ages." The counselors muttered, fear and anger fighting inside them. One growled, "It will destroy us all." Another hissed, "Or save us." The human stood trapped in the center, torn between their voices and the living presence clawing into his mind. He screamed as the armor surged, his body arching with pain. Then suddenly, power. His shaking hands steadied, his vision cleared. For the first time, he felt strength running through his veins, strength not his own. He lifted his hand without meaning to, and the armor obeyed. A blast of energy erupted, striking the floor with a deafening crack. The chamber erupted in chaos, guards raising weapons, counselors shouting in disbelief. But the human stood frozen, his own hand trembling. "I didn't mean to," he whispered, his voice shaking. The armor pulsed like a living heartbeat, as if laughing at his denial. The queen's eyes narrowed with satisfaction. "You see," she said firmly, "the armor does not choose lightly. It remembers him, it bonds to him." Her words were dangerous, sharp as a blade. The counselors shouted back, some furious, some terrified. "This is abomination," one cried. "This is destiny," another countered. The human's mind spiraled. Destiny? No, this was not destiny. It was a trap. He had been dragged into something far beyond himself. He was not a warrior, not a savior, just a man who fixed armor. And yet the armor clung to him as if it had waited centuries for his touch. The queen raised her voice above the storm, her tone final, unshakable. "He is the key," she declared. "The armor has awakened, and through him we will command it." The chamber roared with protest, but none dared defy her. The human stood at the center, his body trembling, the armor pulsing brighter with every beat of his heart. And deep inside, he knew the truth. The armor was not his tool, not his shield. It was alive, and it had chosen him, whether he wanted it or not. The council chamber burned with voices, a storm of fear and anger. Some shouted for the human's death, others demanded exile. None wished for him to remain. But the queen stood calm above them, her glowing eyes fixed on the trembling figure at the center. The human stood stiff, his breath shallow, the armor pulsing against his skin as if it had become part of him. The counselors pounded their weapons against the floor, their voices sharp. "This cannot be allowed," one cried. "He is poison," another growled. The sound echoed, filling the air with fury. But the queen raised her hand, and silence crashed down. Her voice was steady, carrying across the vast chamber. "You fear him because you do not control him," she said. "You fear him because he awakens what you cannot." Her words stung the council, their glowing eyes narrowing. But none could deny the truth of what they had seen. The queen turned her gaze back to the human. Her voice dropped lower, quieter, but heavy as iron. "You belong to me now," she said. The human's chest tightened, his fists clenching. He wanted to shout, to deny, to tell her he belonged to no one. But the armor pulsed in rhythm with her words, as if agreeing. The council erupted again. "You claim a human as your own?" One roared. "This dishonors us all." Another spat. The queen's eyes flashed with fire. "You call it dishonor," she said. "I call it survival." She stepped down from her throne, her towering form casting a long shadow across the floor. She circled the human slowly, her presence wrapping around him like a net. "This war has drained us," she said, her voice echoing. "Our warriors fall, our armor sleeps, and yet this fragile creature awakens it." Her words carried power, not just to the council, but to every guard and warrior watching. "Would you waste such a gift because of pride?" she demanded. The counselors murmured, some lowering their heads, others glaring in defiance. The human stood trapped, his heart pounding. He wanted to scream that he was no gift, that he was nothing more than a man who wanted to live. But his voice was gone, swallowed by fear and the weight of the queen's command. She stopped in front of him, leaning closer, her glowing eyes searching his. "You are mine," she whispered, so low only he could hear. "Your touch is no accident, it is fate." Her words sank into him like chains. He shook his head, whispering, "I don't want this." But the armor pulsed again, stronger, betraying his denial. The queen straightened, turning back to the council. "I choose him," she declared, her voice loud, unshakable. Gasps rippled through the chamber, followed by roars of protest. But the queen's authority was final, her word law. "He will serve as my hand," she said. "Through him, the armor will awaken. Through him, our enemies will fall." The guards bowed, some reluctantly, some in silence. The human felt the ground shift under him, his future stolen in a single moment. He was no longer a visitor, no longer an engineer. He was a weapon. The queen raised her hand, and the chamber fell silent once more. Her gaze swept across her people, daring any to challenge her. "Mark my words," she said, "this human is no curse. He is our key, and none will harm him." The warriors lowered their heads, obedience forced by fear, but their eyes still burned with hatred when they looked at the human. He stood frozen, the weight of the armor pressing deep into his chest. He wanted to tear it off, to run, to wake and find this was only a dream. But the armor would not release him, and the queen would not let him go. As the chamber emptied, the guards closed in around him, not as protectors, but as watchers. Every step he took was followed, every breath measured. He was alive only because the queen willed it, and that truth hollowed him inside. When the last of the counselors left, the queen turned to him once more, her voice soft. "You think this is prison," she said, "but in time you will see it is purpose." The human stared at her, his voice breaking. "I never asked for this," he whispered. The queen's lips curved faintly, almost like a smile. "Fate does not ask," she replied. The armor pulsed again, warm against his skin, and deep inside, the human felt the terrible truth. He was no longer himself. He was claimed, bound, chosen, and no matter how hard he fought, there was no escape.